Hi, and welcome back to Plan 9 Crunch. I am Joe Gibson, and every week we read from a genre novel. This week I want to revisit the translation of Takashi Yamazaki's novelization of his Oscar-winning film Godzilla Minus One, ahead of some news about that film's upcoming sequel, Godzilla Minus Zero. This will still be a bit more focused on Minus Zero, though, so you'll see. Before we begin, Takashi Yamazaki wrote this, of course, but this is the English translation, so it was Evan Ward who's translated this for 7 Seas Entertainment with a release. It was $15.99 USA, $20.99 Canadian. You can buy this on Amazon pretty easily. And the ISBN, if you need that for some reason, would be 9798895617588. Alright. I like this book a lot. I've reread it twice since the first video we did on it, which you can see here. Today I want to use it to bolster some speculations on where the upcoming sequel Godzilla Minus Zero will go. Now, this video is probably going up on the 15th. Between the 13th and the 16th, Cinemacon will be held in Las Vegas. On the 14th, there will be an exclusive presentation from G-Kids, the organization behind the distribution of Godzilla Minus One and Godzilla Minus Zero. This will include some words from Takashi Yamazaki, who wrote, directed, and led the special effects team for both films, and likely some exclusive footage. It is unclear if any of this presentation will leak to the public, and even if a description does, it is unclear how trustworthy that would be. A while ago, Production Weekly had a listing for Minus Zero, and a hoaxer recently pretended it included a plot synopsis, and nobody checked for a couple of days because of Production Weekly's high paywall. Eventually someone did, and that's how we found out. It was a fake leak. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that yesterday, as of when this is going up, Takashi Yamazaki gave a presentation that includes a first look at Minus Zero, and you should look into that if you're interested. I am operating in this video as if that information will never reach my eyes and ears, but technically I don't know that for sure. For the rest of the video, I will speculate a little bit on what Minus Zero could entail with the help of the English translation of Minus One, because Yamazaki wrote this too and might have left behind some hints about the next film. Well, that was the original idea. I'm going to use this to back up some of my claims more so than for speculation. But the next film comes out in a little under 7 months, so be excited for that. The presiding prognostication for this movie is that Yamazaki will bring back another monster for Godzilla to fight. And he has talked, sometimes jokingly, sometimes seriously, about monsters such as Anguirus, the Ankylosaur, the first opponent to Godzilla, or Hedorah, the smog monster. This film will have to do quite a balancing act, as Minus One's acclaim led to a minor reevaluation of the genre in pop culture. And then Godzilla X Kong came around and did dub things that remind critics why they hate the genre. What I generally see in the discourse is that the perspective that only the solo Godzilla films have managed to be good and say something, 54, 84, Shin Godzilla Minus One, I disagree with that. I think the 2 solo movies back to back might even be a bit stale. But Yamazaki might feel like he has to be careful to redeem the idea of a kaiju fight. He's also said that this film is to be a statement piece, whatever that means, so there'll have to be a purpose to the fight in the story. And we also need to know this Godzilla can fight things, because, some people think he's pretty weak, his beam hurts him, So let's go to page 21. This is when Godzilla, in his Godzillasaurus form, the primitive one that he then gets blasted with a nuke to get out of into his main form. This is his weaker form. As the creature continued its rampage, it stepped right into a stockpile of oil drums filled with gasoline, crushing them underfoot. Their fuel was set alight in a giant blaze by the electrical sparks from the shattered searchlight, and the resulting blaze cast an orange glow onto the beast's imposing form, revealing angular scales that lined its epidermis and twinkling golden pupils. Koichi could only watch in horror as the beast known as Godzilla walked right through the fire and flames step by lumbering step, utterly undeterred by the explosion. So he's got a resistance to flames in his base form. Yamazaki also says that he has regeneration in the base form. That's later. I already read his birth, but that is when He gets nuked and then starts healing himself, but it goes all out of whack, so he starts growing more tissue than he needs and becomes 50 meters tall. There's enough here. He's a ferocious thing. He moves around in quicker motions, swifter motions, hand tooth and nail to defeat the Odo Island garrison. However, more so than just, if he can fight, why would he fight? We must consider this version of Godzilla represented something very specific about the cycle and cost of war and PTSD. He also had a very specific angry personality that lends itself to villain or anti-hero status very efficiently. The destruction is more than just colors on screen. Let's turn to page 26. It's the same set piece, but the conclusion of it. With unquenching fury in its eyes, Godzilla gazed out over the sea of flames its rampage had caused, then let out a roar of victory. Koichi could only watch in dazed disbelief for a few moments longer, before he finally blacked out. Godzilla takes some pleasure in causing the destruction in this novel. And in the movie, you'll see that in the Ginza set piece as well. I'll not read that section yet, because if I do another deep dive into Minus One in this novel, I've got some issues with the Ginza set piece. But just know it's a motif. He gazes on the destruction that he causes, transfixed by it. All right. If this film is a statement piece by saying something about the time period, there's precedent for using Anguirus fighting Godzilla to represent Soviets versus Americans in the Cold War, but a monster like Hedorah could represent Minamoto disease or any ecological event Japan faced in the 50s, because there were a fair few of them. Many people are convinced that Hedorah will be in the movie because Yamazaki's talked about wanting to do Hedorah. And yeah, Hedorah would be my #1 choice. But I am in the camp that it probably is going to be King Ghidorah. Actually, let's throw Godzilla Minus Zero's poster on screen right now for this point. It clicked for me once I first saw this thing that Ghidorah is probably going to be Godzilla's foe in the movie. But again, as of when I'm recording this, that has not been confirmed. Some people still see Hedorah or even Mothra in this poster, bless their hearts, but for me, there are no less than 3 different ways of looking at this yellow cloud that I see Ghidorah. Now yes, I understand that having 3 distinct readings of the same image is less credible than one interpretation. But just bear with me here. I see 3 heads coming out of 2 wings aimed at the bottom of the screen. I see 1 roaring head with a beak towering over a small Godzilla positioned by the Zero, and I see a yellow cloud overpowering a blue storm. That last point is the most important, actually, because this resembles so heavily so many of the posters for Godzilla King of the Monsters that equated Godzilla and Ghidorah to battling environments. Yamazaki has borrowed imagery from the MonsterVerse thus far, so I think we should take careful note of that similarity. We can take the poster off the screen now. Well, it may not be Ghidorah. I have come around to the idea, especially because it would be kind of weird for the film called Minus Zero to not have Monster Zero, and I have some hopes for how they do the character. First, he would need to be a take on the character like Minus One was for Godzilla, that feels classic, but is still innovative in the way we think of the character. See how Minus One Goji's design is a classic mix between Heisei and MonsterVerse with 54 imagery, but notably added the concept of using the beam, that it hurts him, too, because he was one of the first victims of his brand of radiation. In the same vein, consider MonsterVerse King Ghidorah, where Michael Dougherty made some innovative changes that feel obvious now, but were new and slotted so well into this classic throwback take on the character. Each head had a different personality, and you can see the electricity going up the necks when he charged up his beams. Now again, Yamazaki seems to like the MonsterVerse and based his own amusement park Ghidorah design on MonsterVerse Ghidorah, at least partially. So, again, he also has a working Ghidorah design on file that he could use for this. No matter if the enemy kaiju is Ghidorah, Rodan, or Mothra, I want this film to leverage his superiority of the air very well. There's a part in this book as well that talks about how the reason why the deep-sea fish come up when Godzilla surfaces is not just because he's dragging them with his current and gravity. They are running away from him with fear. He's the dominant creature of the ocean. So let's have the dominant creature of the sky. And the rumors say that the cast from Minus One will return. I want Shikishima to have more opportunities to fly around fighting more monsters. Alright, the last thing is I don't want this to feel like a gratuitous studio-mandated fight. Ghidorah is an important part of the Godzilla franchise, but I want to see Yamazaki's vision in Yamazaki's movie. Ghidorah has so many other movies I can watch whenever, and dipping into Godzilla comics has given me a bit of fatigue when it comes to obligatory subpar Ghidorahs. It may compound into full-on Ghidorah fatigue to see him done mediocre for no real purpose in a -1 sequel, but the cure would be seeing a well-thought-out innovation of the character that Yamazaki's passionate about. Okay, now the most important thing in -1 was the characters, and at the end of that film, it featured 2 teases. One that mechanically focuses on how Godzilla could return, and the other, what the humans might be up to, what might happen to our characters, the Godzilla mark on Noriko's neck. In the context of that as a complete story, it is merely a mark of radiation sickness. Though the war is over and Noriko and Shikishima survived Godzilla's wrath, they both still bear physical and mental scars, and may be marked for an early grave based on their varying levels of exposure in Ginza. In the context of the franchise as a whole, well, a young woman having a connection to Godzilla appears a lot. So we're probably not going to go the routes of Dio or Sujimori as like the polar options. So the popular fan theory is that Noriko will have a psychic connection to Godzilla akin to Miki Sagusa from the 90s films. Another fan theory is that Noriko will mutate into Biollante, a monster from Miki's first film, but there's something a lot more interesting in how both this Godzilla and Noriko are victims of nuclear weaponry. And the way for these characters to move forward may be to find that shared vulnerability. The Japanese veterans in -1 saluted Godzilla as he died, and the viciousness of Godzilla was meant to match the unrest and turmoil within Shikishima. Godzilla and Shikishima will probably both want revenge based on being reduced to a heart, and the mark on Noriko's neck, respectively. But their war is technically over. I'd find it a lot more interesting to see this vicious Godzilla be a circumstantial ally, eviscerating an enemy monster, and being ambiguously convinced to leave by an apathetic Noriko. It should go without saying that the most important thing is to stay true to the characters while moving them forward. But the Godzilla films that feature returning characters often kill them off abruptly or shift the focus dramatically away from them. See the Monsterverse for an example of both, or Akane Yashiro in Tokyo SOS for the latter. The more I think about -1, the more impressive I find Godzilla's water scenes. They are nearly flawless, especially compared to the occasionally stilted land-walking scenes. And this is atypical, as traditionally, Godzilla films would use different, worse, recycled, and more disposable suits for their water scenes, which makes many of them the worst parts of their films. -1 was able to make the water scenes one of the best parts of the film, and there's something powerful about that as a statement about Yamazaki's talents. He also managed to make a bunch of tugboats pulling Godzilla out of the water not sound stupid. One of my specific hopes is that Yamazaki and his team will continually improve on the weaker areas of the previous film. They made Godzilla look magnificent in the water last time, now make him look as magnificent on land. They tied all the kaiju plot into a tight, emotional human story with strong themes. Now do that without the Ginza set-piece contrivances. I believe in this film a lot and hope it tries to improve upon itself once more. Other than that, I will be easy to please. There's a lot riding on this film, but well, we'll all see come November if it is good or not. -1 success also translated into a lot of merchandise. I showed some of it off in my review of Godzilla -1. You can see here. But I've also acquired some new stuff. C4 had a seemingly temporary, since I've not found it since the initial purchases, a C4 Sour Blue Razilla. You can see the -1 design on here, and this is quite the drink. Do not attempt it if you don't drink energy drinks. And then Super 7 had more than just the one that I showed off. This is the Train Biter. They also had Atomic Breath variants. The Train Biter is the best one. If you can get one of the blind boxes, get this one. But no, buy the book is the main thing. The link will be in the description. Thank you all for watching. We read from book every week here. We have all sorts of other stuff. You can follow us on this YouTube page to find. We also have a TikTok page, a Facebook page, a conventional blog. Look into those as you will. Thank you all for watching. That's a wrap.